All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Inside In Tennis Podcast. Mitch Michals here, all part of the Believe Network. Tons of great content. We are into the North American hard court swing. Canada in the rear view. Cincinnati is in full effect. Joining me now, it's one of the premier voices in all of tennis media. He's called so many iconic matches. He works for Tennis Channel. He's covered the game so well. Jason Goodall returning to the show. He's a friend of the program. So Jason, it's always nice to have you back on the podcast.
Great to be here. What an introduction. I've got a lot to live up to that next half an hour, but always fun.
Yeah, and you always teach us some stuff too. You teach us some lessons, maybe some phrases, some old English phrases too, so I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, starting off with this, right? Like you're in the mix of it. We're in this sweet spot of the calendar. Cincinnati's kind of the lead up, and we know there's been an overhaul, but how are you feeling right now? And how do you think the tennis world is reacting to just, the lot of tennis that we have to play, but also the fact that we're in the sweet spot? Cincinnati's such a big event. The more things change, this has always just been a premier place to be.
I'm going to turn that upside down initially. Is it a sweet spot? It should be, right? Because you've got back-to-back Masters, ATP 1000s, WTA 1000s. And I remember, you mentioned I've been commentating for quite some time. I'm going to date myself now. But, when the ATP Masters events used to be 1 week, that Canada, Cincinnati used to be absolutely awesome. You used to have all the very best players playing both weeks, and you'd go Monday through Sunday, and then you'd lead into the US Open. And it was always very much a sweet spot, always very much a highlight of the calendar, because you had some really, really good tennis off the back of clay court swing and the grass court swing. And then this was the nuts and bolts of the tennis really for the rest of the year. Then you had a few indoor events at the tail end of the year, but this was it as far as the Americans were concerned in particular. And I think this year it's been difficult because we've only had a couple of weeks in between the end of the championships and the start of Canada. You've got the strange finish midweek. I think Canada was probably the most difficult event I've ever tried to follow as a tennis fan. I wasn't working the event. I was just trying to watch from home. And you're wondering who's playing, what round is it? There's no matches during the day. We're playing in the evening. What's happening? You're having to rejig the doubles final because all of a sudden those players are in the main draw in Cincinnati. Yeah. It's crazy, and it's really, really difficult. And I think the tournament suffered because we didn't have Sinner and Alcaraz on the men's side. We didn't have Sabalenka on the women's side. But, of course, we had great storylines in both, with Shelton winning the men and then Mboko winning the women, which was absolutely fabulous. And let's hope we see a lot more of her, not only this season, but in the coming sort of next 10 years or so. So it should be a sweet spot. Right. Is it a sweet spot at the moment? Not necessarily so. But next year, I think there's going to be 3 weeks in between the end of the championships and the start of Canada. I know the tournament director there has spoken to Sinner and Alcaraz and all the best players in the world and is hopeful that we can get the best players playing these big events. That's what we always want. But I think there's a little bit of a backlash at the moment from the players and the fans with these elongated events. It's much more difficult to follow, and it's much harder for the players to hang around for longer periods of time and commit and do well in these events. I was actually having a conversation with Sam Querrey yesterday. I was saying, do you think it was harder back in the day to win back-to-back Canada Cincinnati titles as a man or a woman when there were 7-day events, because you had to play a lot of times in a much more condensed space of time, or now where you're playing over 4 weeks? And he said physically probably a little more difficult back in the day, but mentally perhaps a little more tougher now, because you've got to stay switched on for a 4-week period, and that can take a lot more out of you. People often talk about that in the majors, right? That over the 2-week period, it's not necessarily the amount of tennis you play, especially on the women's side, where it's just best of 3. Yeah. But it's how you can handle it mentally, the downtime, all of that thought process. So it's an interesting conundrum at the moment for the tours and for the players, but it's always great to be in Cincinnati.
Yeah, props to the tournament director for Canada, Carl Hale. You mentioned talking to Sinner and Alcaraz. That extra week next week is going to be huge to get hopefully everyone back. But it's a decision-making process. And the flip side, too, is for Mboko, for Naomi Osaka, the other finalists, they're not in Cincinnati. You're also going to have to explain to me, Jason, the performance by thing. I try to follow.
I was hoping you were going to explain those to me, because I was looking at those this week and I was going, hang on, what happens there? How does that work? What happens to the 2 players that were seeded that got bumped, that didn't get the buys, and then suddenly those 2 players pull out anyway? So, it doesn't work at all, does it?
No, it doesn't. And you have to prioritize your health and your mental health too, especially with the U.S. Open, the bigger prize for these players. But just to mention and put a bow on Canada, great storylines on either side. The Victoria Mboko moment, and you mentioned that, Jason, just remarkable. She beat 4 major champions. We had to look back to Serena Williams in '99. That was the last youngest player to do so when she won her first major title, that U.S. Open. But Victoria Mboko winning that title, we all knew about the potential that she had, some of the firepower that she possessed, but to do what she did, get into the top 25 now, Jason, and to do it in the manner she did, having to rally, having to win from a set down, Rybakina served for the match twice, it really showed her mettle as much as it did her skill.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, people had talked about her in the last couple of years, but hadn't been able to get across many of her matches. Saw play, I think it was Coco Gauff in Rome maybe earlier this year. Really good 3-set match there. And then everybody was like, okay, she's going to be good at some stage in the future, but we didn't expect it to happen as quickly as it had. And in the manner in which it did in Canada. Absolutely fabulous. What a great storyline that was. Got so much home support. And it was great hearing her talk after the win that she was delighted off the back of just being in the main draw, getting a wild card, just winning her first match. And that's what you've got to kind of remember. For somebody at her stage of her career, winning a match is a big deal on home soil at a WTA 1000. So to then take that in your stride, reset your goals, next match, biggest win of your career, reset your goals, next match, biggest win of your career, reset your goals, next match. And then to keep coming back from behind, coming through the epic against Rybakina, who's playing some really good tennis this season, was across her match yesterday in Cincinnati. And just absolutely remarkable. Then you come up against your idol in the final, right? We know how that normally goes when you got players playing against players that they've idolized from a kid.
Right.
And normally you're just happy to be on the court. They lose the opening set comfortably. Naomi back in full swing, playing some good tennis. You thought very little chance of her turning it around. The major surprise was how quickly she went away in that deciding set, crowd getting involved midway through the second set. And what a fabulous storyline. And I actually think it's a good thing that she pulled out of Cincinnati this week. I was talking to someone yesterday. He said, no, I don't know why she pulled out. I don't get it. Jimmy Arias, similar scenario. And I was like, no, I think it's really, really good because you've got to celebrate that moment. It's been like Raducanu, right? Winning the US Open, obviously slightly bigger, but again, going from nowhere through the qualifying, winning her first major, the only tournament she's ever won, incidentally, in her career so far. And you've got to then reset. So even though this is not like winning a major, it's right up there for Mboko. Yeah. And I think it's nice for her now to go back with her team, to relax, to enjoy it, spend some time with her family, and then reset, and then slowly, gradually get back into it, get used to being ranked as high as she is, get used to being seeded in the majors now, and then really give it a good go at the US Open. I think had she come here, everybody would still have been talking about Canada, checking her phone, getting messages, and it would have been just really, really difficult for her to then focus again on doing really, really well. And then if she has a bad loss, does that sort of taint the really good feeling she had from Canada? So I think that was really smart. I'm not as sure it was a smarter move for Osaka unless she's injured, because you're just starting to get on a roll there. So why don't you come here, play some more good tennis going into the US Open? So that surprised me somewhat, but I think it was a smart move from Vicky.
Yeah, only her 7th main draw. That's the craziest thing in general. Made her major debut at Roland Garros, and now she's winning a Masters tournament. And yeah, it's nice for the game, right? We have another young player that is well on her way. The Naomi Osaka part of this, Jason, it's tough because we know how it ended. We know that there were some regrets with how she handled the trophy ceremony and the press conference and everything. I know she did apologize, and I understand that players get heated and things might happen where they don't handle things at their best. That's the beauty of competitive sports in a lot of ways. But it's unfortunate because she played so well. I do think she discovered something. She found a little something with her game. But when you lose in the manner she did and how things go down at the end, that's what leaves, unfortunately, that bad taste in your mouth.
It does, and I think had she come to Cincinnati, and I liked what she said in the post-match press conference, she held her hands up, said, my bad. That's fine. Come to Cincinnati, answer a few more questions, get back in a match court, win a few more matches. It's all forgotten, and on you go. So I think that would have been, perhaps the best move, working with a new coach for the first time. So that's great. It always helps to cement that relationship when you have success initially. She had that great match against Swiatek at Roland Garros a couple of years ago, and everybody thought she's back. She's going to do great, especially when she gets on the hard courts. We haven't seen it. A lot of losses. Didn't work out with Pimo as her coach. And I think that's a nice, intelligent switch that she's made. And obviously it seems to have worked well right from the off. A lot of success initially. And I would have just kept that ball rolling. I would have just focused on the tennis, held my hands up, for the ceremony, because she did make a big faux pas, no doubt about that. It'd be nice to see her being gracious, as Khachanov was, Shelton in the final. So he showed us how it should be done. But no, these things happen. Move on. I'm delighted that Osaka's starting to play some good ball, because I think it's the more really, really good players, the former major winners we have at the top of the women's game, the better it is. We know draws tend to be wide open anyway, but I'd like to see Osaka back at the top of the game, moving as well as she did, crunching the ball from the back of the court, serving big, because then she does have the weaponry to be able to beat the best players in the world, and it would be great to have her in the mix.
Certainly would. And yeah, just being able for Mboko to handle the crowd was impressive. We've seen even in Cincinnati, some of the local players not doing as well. The Canadian men didn't do as hot either. So it takes a special ability, a special part of your character to handle that. Well, the men's side, Jason, was Ben Shelton. We thought about this going in. This could be the land of opportunity for the men's players looking for that first big notch in their belt. No Sinner, no Alcaraz. We know that there was opportunity, and it was Ben Shelton that walked through that door. He gets through Kaboli rallies, thoroughly beats Taylor Fritz, and then beats Karen Khachanov in 3 sets. So for Ben Shelton, it was a moment that signified not just the biggest title of his career, but the best he's ever looked consistency-wise. This is a player that's put a lot of pieces to his game, and you can explain it even further. This guy has gotten progressively better in 2025 and looks like a major player.
I think that's the key. The word you used there was consistency, because Ben's always going to be one of these guys who undoubtedly has one of the best serves that we've ever seen in the game, certainly of this generation. The fact that he's left-handed gives him huge advantage, the variation that he brings. So holding serve, no problem. But we always said at the start of his career, we referenced the likes of John Isner, Sam Querrey, big servers, Karlovic. Yeah, it's fine holding serve. You got to break in order to win majors. You can't go into best of 5-set matches like you did at Wimbledon last year and suddenly play 5 setters first, second, third round because you're not breaking serve regularly enough. You run out of juice in the middle weekend. You're never going to win a major. That was always the problem for somebody like John Isner. But this improvements, the tolerance from the back of the court is so much better now. And I was speaking to Jimmy Harris about it. He was up there commentating, and he said I think he beat Minaur as well, didn't he? He said the back wins over Minaur and Fritz, where he was out rallying those players from the back of the court. I mean, it takes something very special to beat Taylor Fritz pretty comfortably, like 3 and 4, and Taylor will back himself against anybody from the back of the court other than Sinner and Alcaraz. And, he made him look pretty average in that match there. Sure, Fritz can play a little bit better, but Shelton only allowed him to play to a certain level. And that was off the back of beating de Minaur, and then off the back of playing against Khachanov in the final, who was playing some really, really good tennis. Nice to see him back knocking on the door of the world's top 10 once more. It's been quite a while for him.
Yeah.
So I think this is a huge improvement. If he can start to get more returns in play, he can start to understand to use the forehand a little more wisely. Don't go super big all the time. Wait for the right opportunity. Go big sometimes, mix up the pace of shot that you hit so that your opponent isn't getting into a nice rhythm. But he bettered de Minaur and he bettered Fritz from the back of the court. So if he can, start to do that on a regular basis, and it must have given him so much confidence. Then he gets the big win. And I'd love to see him, we know how well he plays in the majors, really, really make another deep run at the US Open. And I think that win in Canada, irrespective of how well he does here in Cincy, will give him an extra edge if he does get quarterfinals, semifinals in New York.
Totally agree with that last point, especially. And, I know one tournament, we're very short-term memory and how we look at sports and results and everything. And I know there's a huge gap, right? Sinner and Alcaraz, they're the guys that have beaten Shelton in all the majors this year. But I watched that and I couldn't help but wonder, Jason, he looked like the 3rd best player in the world, at least. And do you think that that's where he might be settling into that number 3 spot? I know obviously there's a gap between 1, 2 and everybody else right now.
Yeah, there is. And then there's Novak. And we don't really know where to categorize Novak. We had him as the 3rd best player at the start of the year. We had him going into the clay court swing as the 3rd best. On grass, I had him as the 2nd best behind Alcaraz. And then Sinner surprised everybody. Well, not perhaps everybody, but certainly me, the quality of tennis that he brought at the end of those championships, and handsomely beat Alcaraz in that final. So with Novak not playing, we don't really know. So I think you're right. I think suddenly it's Sinner setting the bar, undoubtedly, especially on hard courts. Then it's Alcaraz, then it's the rest. So you've got the likes of Djokovic, you've got the likes of Zverev, you've got the likes of Shelton. And I think those are the best players now. We've seen the likes of Rublev and Medvedev, Tsitsipas really drop off. Mitch was awful yesterday, hardly tried in the 3rd set of his match. I was so surprised about his attitude there. So I think there is an opportunity for somebody like Shelton to talk about Taylor Fritz. I'd definitely put him in that category as well. Someone like Tommy Paul, perhaps just behind them. But I think, depending on half of the draw that you fall in, got to get Shelton up there as a favorite to make at least the semifinals. And then you put him in against Sinner, then it's going to be a tough ask, as it is for everybody. But you're putting him against Alcaraz, and you never really know. And all of a sudden, could be in his first major final.
Boy, Djokovic is just so fascinating because no one deserves more benefit of the doubt than literally the greatest ever. But his last 3 tournaments are going to be the majors. So it's a weird thing, right? And I know he's made the semis in all of them this year, so he's still able to play to a high level. But literally no prep time is a weird one. It's a unique situation to be in. I wonder if you can really contend without playing anything.
Well, so many great players at the tail end of their career have wanted to do this. They wanted to play fewer tournaments, but they've still wanted to peak at the majors, obviously. No one's been able to do it better than Novak at the tail end of his career. But I think most people were suggesting at the start of this season, for him to stand a chance of adding to his major tally, he had to play more regularly. He had to get more confidence, beating some of the very best players in the world. He had to build up his base level of fitness. We saw that was the problem in Australia. You can't do that playing fewer tournaments, because it doesn't matter what you do on the practice court. It doesn't replicate the pressure you're under and the stress and strain on your body and your mind on the match court, especially when you're playing best of 5 sets on the men's side. So I just don't see how that is a recipe for success for Novak. And, I'd be really surprised. I shouldn't be surprised by anything these great players do. I've made that mistake in the past with the likes of Sampras and Nadal when he had his first little dip and then came back so strongly. But I mean, it would be remarkable if Novak was able to win the US Open. And then off the back of the US Open, what does he do the rest of the year? And then does he go again next season? I think that have to be a lot of question marks there. If he's not enjoying playing week in, week out, if he's not getting up for these, big events, the ATP Masters thousands, and he's not enjoying competing against these players, how are you going to have success at any stage in the future? That's my big question.
Yeah, finding the motivation when you've won it all is the big part, and your body is going in the other direction, as healthy as he is and as much as he's defied time. So we'll see with Novak Djokovic. Just the last note I wanted to also give him credit before we move on is Karen Khachanov making the final. You mentioned the post, the trophy ceremony, just a phenomenal speech. A great ambassador for the sport, Jason, and really under the radar accomplished. I saw yesterday he won his 200th hardcourt match, so somebody that's been doing it at a high level for a long time and one of the great guys on tour.
No doubt. It's funny you mentioned that, because at the start of the season, I was on the Second Serve show with Chiz on Tennis Channel 2 a couple of times. And every time we started talking about who might do well this week, I said, what about Khachanov? How come nobody mentions Khachanov? Out of these events, he's a 2-time major semi-finalist. He's a former top 10 player. He's won at ATP Masters 1000 level before. And everyone was like, well, he just disappears midway through these events. We don't see him at the tail end of them. So that's why nobody ever references him as a player that might be in the championship match at an ATP Masters 1000 event or at a major. And so I think it's really, really nice. I actually did a couple of his matches earlier in the year where he lost tight ones and he was really, really struggling. Ranking had kind of dipped to 19, 20 in the world. And I just thought he was hitting the ball really well. And Sam Querrey said yesterday in commentary, he said, sometimes you have success and you're not doing anything differently at all. Yeah. You just keep working hard. You just keep hoping that the next match is the one that turns it around for you this season. So it's been great that he's, stuck with his nose to the grindstone, and now he's starting to reap those rewards for continuing to work really hard. Because when he's playing well, I mean, he's a great player to watch. Yeah. You can really pull for him because he's a super nice guy. And it's just so nice to have him back in the mix, especially losing the likes of Medvedev and Rublev and Tsitsipas out of the top 10. To have him back knocking on the door of the top 10 again, I think is a good thing for tennis, because he brings a sort of different style of tennis to the match court, and he's easy to pull for.
Certainly is. And we've got more with Jason Goodall here on the Inside in Tennis podcast. We're talking Cincinnati now, moving ahead in the North American hard court swing with one of the premier commentators in the game. And Cincinnati. The buzz before the tournament started, Jason, we mentioned at the top of this how it's a mainstay on tour, but just the overhaul, you've got players saying that this is as nice as it gets now. And I think Opelka said it's right up there with Wimbledon. Are you seeing the amenity difference that it's kind of upgraded?
Wimbledon is obviously the best tournament in the world.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
I know that. I'm not going to push back.
It might be just under the facilities they offer at the Old England Lawn Tennis Club. But listen, absolutely magnificent job that everybody has done. They started the bulldozing like 7 days after the event last year, finished it a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things they've done really nicely is now there's sort of 4 entrances, but on each of the entrances, as you walk in, especially the main entrance, suddenly you've got the new Champions Court there, which is like this lovely little sunken court, a few thousand people. So it's nice and intimate, always create good atmosphere. You get some good American players on there as well. So that instantly has become a favorite court for the fans and players alike. Then you've got the main 2 show courts as you had in the past, but it's all of the other facilities that they've improved so drastically. It was a tired tournament, 1899, right? First time they held it. Right. And it was hot, it was humid, and it was middle of nowhere. It was tough for the players and fans, even the hardcore tennis fans. There wasn't a lot on offer. But now you've got everything, the facilities, the gyms, the changing rooms, the restaurant, the quality of the food. and for fans too. So much more for them to enjoy walking around the outside courts. I love the new color scheme of the tennis courts as well. So they've done everything right, as you would expect, because there's a great management team in place there. And they'll certainly go on and improve it further still in the next 12 months as well. But I mean, to have been able to make such a drastic change in such a short space of time is absolutely incredible. Everybody, bar none, pitched up here and go, wow, this is amazing. You know, you're talking about, Sam Querrey yesterday was talking about the fact that maybe they'll win Tournament of the Year. You know, the HP Masters 1000, normally Indian Wells wins it, hands down, great tournament there. Can't get much better than that. But I think this year, Cincinnati will give them a run for their money because absolutely magnificent.
Really glad it stayed too. You know, Midwest has lost. I'm a Midwest guy, and it's lost some tournaments, so it's good that we still have that there. And we've got the top players back, as you mentioned. I wanted to spend a moment. It's funny, right? The two best players in the men's game, Sinner and Alcaraz, have entirely different approaches to at least early round tennis. You have Jannik Sinner, as we talked before we started. That match over Galan was the quickest match win he's ever had, under an hour. Sinner can take breaks. He can, reset, recharge, the suspension we've talked about before. But when he hits the court, Jason, it's like he never missed a step. And I know players say they want to do that, but it's really a remarkable thing to see him just pick up where he left off.
I don't know how I can say it in many more different ways, but the base level of play that he now produces day in, day out is so high. I mean, he's redefining what tennis at the highest level of the game means, because there are no weaknesses in his game. There's no lack of focus, even when he hasn't played for a few weeks. He takes everything very much in his stride. Remember what was happening this time last year with Sinner, before everybody found out about the suspension and all of the drug problems testing positive that he had. But yet he was still winning tournaments. He was still able to put all of that aside. It's so tough mentally. And it just seems like he can do anything. Whatever's put in his way, doesn't matter, any obstacle, he's able to overcome it, other than Alcaraz when he's playing his very best tennis. I mean, we could be talking about a Sinner slam going into New York now. 1 point away in Roland Garros. And had he won that match when he had the 3 match points, it would have been a disappointing performance from Alcaraz, but it would have just been a basic win for Sinner. Djokovic in straights in the semis, Alcaraz in 4 in the final, and we're talking about a Sinner slam now. So that's how good he is. Everybody talks about the top 2. Yes, I know Alcaraz won one of the greatest matches of all time at Roland Garros, but you could argue, flip side of the coin is, he was really lucky, because had Sinner won one of those match points there, then Sinner would have been utterly dominant this season. So there is an argument to say Sinner's there, Alcaraz is there, high points here, perhaps he can leak from him every now and then, but Sinner is setting the bar, and we've seen nothing like it in the past. Absolutely incredible.
It is. The only pushback I'd have is it's hard to know what would have happened if Sinner wins RG. Does that switch the dynamic? How does he come into Wimbledon? That's an entire thing. But yeah, to your point, his baseline is so good. You expect him to be in every tournament. 38-2 now on the season. So just moseying along with those 2 Alcaraz losses on clay. But it's insane. It's impressive that he, as you said, he stomped out all the weaknesses in his game, and you just know what he's going to bring every time. And he's not going to wait for you. Like, you have to bring it on the other end, or it's just going to be a quick day at the office.
How do you hurt him? Somebody like Taylor Fritz plays him, and Taylor thinks, I can't hurt him. I'm going to serve bombs. He's returning incredibly well, getting a rally from the back of the court. You can't hurt him. He takes the ball on the rise. He half volleys the ball back with pace, direction, accuracy. He's improved physically. Last 2 years, incredible, off the charts. He used to be spindly, didn't have the strength to get in and out of the corners as well as he does now. Serve is so much better now under pressure. He can rely upon it. That was the one thing at Roland Garros final that went away. Tail end of the 4th set, start of the 5th set, couldn't make a first serve. So every now and then, that still is a little bit of an Achilles heel, not much. He's starting to come in a little more frequently now. So he's adding to his game. There are no holes in it, and he's adding to it. So he's only going to get better as long as he can maintain this mindset that he has at the moment. I mean, it's going to be really difficult for anybody to catch him.
And the flip side of that, you have Carlos Alcaraz, who we all love watching. He's just a remarkable athlete. His top-end game is untouched, probably by Sinner. But this is just the experience, right? I watched the Zoomer match, and I was thinking, okay, easy first set. Then he kind of dips a little. Then he has to turn it on with some of the most ridiculous hot shots in the third. Jason, that just seems like that's the Alcaraz experience. It's a roller coaster.
It is, and it's Sinner reminds me a little bit of like, the likes of Steffi Graf. You know he's going to win. You know he's going to win quick. It's going to be a pretty one-sided match.
Yeah.
But you just have to appreciate how good he is as a tennis fan. You're not there, and there's very little chance you're going to get a competitive match out of it. With Alcaraz, it's completely different. You have no idea how he's going to play, what's going to happen. He's going to do some incredible shots. He's going to make some awful errors. He's going to miss his forehand by 6 feet out of nowhere. He's going to serve poorly in patches of the matches. Yeah. And it's going to allow opponents to feel like, hey, I might be in this if he can't turn it around. So often he does, but occasionally he doesn't, and he has bad losses. So it's just a different movie when you're watching Alcaraz play compared to Sinner. His Oscar-worthy performances each and every time he steps on the match court. With Sinner, it's a little more of a joyride, a little bit more Bruce Willis, but it's always been fun.
That was the point even before the recent history where I always thinking like Djokovic would rather play Alcaraz than Sinner, because there's moments where he can probably, in his mind, he's like, I can work my way into the match. There'll be an opportunity. I just have to capitalize on it. Whereas Sinner isn't going to give you that opening.
No, I think that would be the mindset for most players if they're absolutely honest. They know how great Alcaraz is. His high notes are much higher than Sinner's, no doubt. You won't find anybody that suggests otherwise, even those in the Sinner camp perhaps. But you're always going to have some low points as well in these matches. That's what good players can make the most of. So I think most would prefer to play against Alcaraz. I think in that Wimbledon final, he served really poorly, didn't he? First serve percentage in set number 3 was like 43% or something. You can't do that. You've got to find a way to be able to serve better. He doesn't sometimes hit his spots with his serve either. Even in that Roland Garros final, there were times when he was just kind of kicking it in. It was 4 feet from the line. So still aspects of his game that he can improve, no doubt. So that's the beauty of both of the best players in the world. But other players will be able to take advantage of that. And he can get a little frustrated, as he did in that Wimbledon final, when he's not playing his best tennis. So there are more windows of opportunity when players come up against Alcaraz than there are when they come up against Sinner, for sure.
We got 5 slams and 4 slams, so it's just going to they're going to keep going because they've won the last 7. But I do want to spend some time in Cincinnati. It's been a great tournament. I want to go quick hitter, some stuff we've seen, some storylines, some results. One being, and you mentioned him earlier, but what is going on with Daniil Medvedev? Because this is as low as it's gotten in probably his pro career since he was established. The loss to Walton, again, props to Walton for winning. But third set looked disinterested, looked disengaged, and looked like he didn't want to be there at all.
No doubt. I mean, it was hot yesterday. It's hot here, hot and humid. So sometimes that affects players. Rybakina talked about that a couple of days ago, said she was really feeling the heat. So that might have been the case for Daniil, but 15 in the world coming into this event, right? His ranking, 5 major finals, the US Open champion, former world number 1. So, I mean, this is a big drop. We talk about Rublev, we talk about Tsitsipas dropping outside and dropping down the rankings. Medvedev's been up there for so long. He was so difficult to beat. Season 2021, remember, he beat Novak in the US Open final when Novak was going for his slam and beat him handsomely. And then in the Aussie Open final, start of 22, he's 2 sets up on Nadal. Novak had played him in Paris at the tail end of 21, and he was serving and volleying each and every point because he couldn't beat Medvedev from the back of the court. That's how well he was playing, the so-called hardcore specialist. So difficult to beat. I mean, no doubt he was setting the standard at tour level at that time, tail end of 21, start of 22. But I don't think he ever recovered from that loss to Nadal when he led by 2 sets to love. He was never quite the same player thereafter. And I think if you dive a little deeper into the numbers, you'll see that the first serve isn't anywhere near as good as it used to be. Everyone talks about him returning 20 feet behind a baseline and not missing from the back of the court. But the serve was phenomenal. He used to go big on a second serve as well. He was tough to break. That's why he was so difficult to beat, because you got nothing for free when you were serving or returning. But he had shoulder problems, not quite sure whether that ever really healed. It certainly affected the quality of his serve. He doesn't hit it as hard as he used to. He doesn't make as many first serves, and that first serve winning percentage isn't anywhere near as good as it used to be, especially against the best players in the world. Yeah. We also know in the last 3 or 4 years, court surfaces slowed down a little bit. Gritty, he hates it in the place like Indian Wells, where he likes to counterpunch. He doesn't want to generate all of his own pace. So that tide turning has hurt his cause as well. So I think it's a combination of a number of things. And I think he hasn't really added to his game. I think it's same scenario with Rublev, same scenario with Tsitsipas. They're no different now than what they were 5 years ago. And the game moves on. All these other players coming up, like Ben Shelton, are now going to set different challenges. So you better have worked on your game. You better have developed, become an all-court player, or done something and be better at some things than you were 3 or 4 years ago. Otherwise,
Yeah.
There's only one way your ranking is going to go. And those are three good examples of that. So, it's a big question for him now. Is he going to go back to the drawing board and start working on other aspects of his game to improve? Or is he happy with his lot in life and what he's achieved in the game? Phenomenal career. Absolutely no doubt about that. But, it must be hard for him now losing to the likes of Walton and not being in Cincinnati. And we've got 8 days of the tournament to go, right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, you have to evolve, right? The game keeps coming. The new players are coming up and players are adding to their game. So there's also the scar tissue side, and it's a good segue with that, Jason, because someone that's dealt with it in a different level, Davidovich Fokina, he's retired now in his last 2 matches after that brutal loss, the City Open, still looking for his first career title. But the Fonseca match was wild. He was a set 4-love up and just tapped out in the second set. It was weird to see, and I wonder if, I hope he's doing all right with his health and with all the mental side of it too, but a weird position to retire in, to say the least.
We couldn't believe it. We were commentating on another match, but we had that on our monitor, and we were talking about Fonseca initially, like, hey, everyone's talking about Fonseca. He's going to get beaten by Davidovich Fokina, who's having a great season, but when's Joao going to step up? What's the deal there? I saw a funny tweet from somebody off the back of Vicky Mboko winning in Canada, and they said, Mboko is the player that everybody thinks Fonseca is.
Yeah,
right?
I saw that. Yeah.
Because everyone's like, hey, Fonseca is going to be amazing. And he hasn't really done much this year, still young, obviously I think he's going to be a great player, but he hasn't really done as much as some people thought he would. And he's 4-love down second set. You think it's game over. Then Sam Querrey gave me a nudge, 4-2, and he said, like, just have keep an eye on what's happening.
It was like he was keeling over. That was the thing. It was weird.
And it was like, okay, and that can happen when, the heat and the humidity affects you. You need to go through a period of sort of 20 minutes before you get a second wind. But I thought, you can't quit then, surely, unless you're absolutely at death's door because, you're a setup. It just looks so poor. We know mentally he's a little suspect. He's still one of these players trying to win his first event. He's had the heartbreak in Washington. He's had the heartbreak earlier this year. I think was it in Delray Beach where he was in the final there. We know we've seen him in fifth set tie breaks do some weird things in majors, spinning and volleying on underarm serves, and afterwards being asked about it and going, I don't know what was happening. Losing the score the next year and getting defaulted or losing the match point when he hits a ball out of the stand. So mentally he's not that strong. So you just hope that it hasn't had too much of an adverse effect on him because, you can have a goal of trying to win an event. Who doesn't want to win an event at tour level? But it's not the be-all and end-all if it takes a little longer. He's having a great season, playing some really good tennis. Such a fun watch. I love watching him play. Great shot maker, super strong. So that was really strange for me. And I just hope that there aren't too many adverse effects. But there's no doubt in the locker room, a lot of people sat up and went, ooh, interesting. Next time I'm playing Davidovich Fokina, I'm going to hang on in there because anything can happen.
That's the big point there, right? Like now the rest of the tour is going to notice that and put that in the memory bank. So you wish him the best. You see what happens. The other thing on the men's side that I wanted to mention, shout out to Reilly Opelka, beats Minaur. The big American gets the win. First time he'd beaten him in, I think, 6 tries. Someone that's been on the road back, but that was a thoroughly impressive straight set win over one of the best athletes on tour. Big one for the big man.
And I thought we'd see a better season from Opelka this year. I was having this conversation with Jimmy Arias on the first day of our commentary a couple of days ago here in Cincy because we were across Reilly's first match. So why don't we see better results from him? He'll enter these tournaments, former top 20 player, huge serve, still serving as well as he once did. And everybody, when he did shoot to prominence the first time, said he's got much better groundies than John Isner. He's a better athlete, plays better all court tennis. So much more upside, but so far hasn't had anywhere near the career that Isner has. So it surprised a lot of people. So a big win like that maybe might, tip the scales in favor of a really good finish to the year, get the ranking back up there again, suddenly get seeded at the majors. I think the downside is when you're ranked outside 32, I had this conversation with Cam Norrie earlier this year when he was struggling to get his ranking back up, and he just said the most difficult thing is just play seeded players so early on in these events now. And then if you don't beat them, you can't get your ranking back up. It's so difficult. It's not good winning a 250. You've got to do well in the thousands and the majors, and there's such a lot of protection for the top 32 players getting seeded. If you're outside of that, you can't break through. It's tough. So this could be a big event for Reilly. Takes the place of de Minaur. If he can have a nice deep run here, gets his ranking up a little bit, another one in New York, all of a sudden, it can be a very different story. But I don't see any reason why he can't do a little better. The one strange thing is he's going absolutely gigantic with each and every ground stroke now when he's returning, And in his first match in Cincinnati, Jimmy Harris was scratching his head. So why did you just make the return there? The other guy's getting a little nervous. It's a big point. Mix things up, make your opponent play under pressure, and then go big at the right time. But he was just rocket after rocket, missed foreign return, missed foreign return, missed foreign return. So, it was a strange game. And obviously he believes in it, and that's all well and good. But if your ranking's still 50, 60 in the world, are you having success with that game plan? And do you have more tools in your kit bag that you could actually make more use of at key moments in matches? Can you play a little more intelligently? Certainly with the quality of his serving and everything else that he has in his game, his ranking should be higher, no doubt.
Yeah, I've talked to Jimmy about this. He thinks he should be top 10. He's just like, Reilly should be a top 10 player. So I know he's big on the train if he can put things together. A couple more things with Jason Goodall here on the Inside In Tennis podcast. On the women's side in Cincinnati, we've got the stars back. We've got Sabalenka back. And you have Iga, who's had the Wimbledon success, Coco at RG. Sabalenka has not won a major this year, took time off after the Wimbledon semifinal loss. Where do you think, and we saw her beat Vondrousova, Jason, but where do you think she's going to be at in this tournament as she gears up for the last major of the year?
Well, it's all about the last major of the year for her. That's how she now judges the quality of her season. She's that good. She's been the most consistent player in the last 2 or 3 years at major level, having struggled prior to that. The loss at Wimbledon will have hurt her, as did the loss Roland Garros, as did the loss in Australia. There's no doubt. When you start playing at that level where you're talking about legacy wins, where you're talking about adding to your major tally, and you lose heartbreakers, it's tough to rebound from that, and it's tough then to get back at WTA level and get us pumped, even at a big tournament like this, as it is to be pumped in New York. But she needs a good tournament, needs to rebuild the confidence, needs to keep the belief, keep enjoying her time on and off the court, and then if she can finish with a win in New York, then I'm sure she would still see it as a relatively successful season because she's knocking on the door and she has added to her tally. Were she not to win in New York, then it would be, I think, a bit of disappointment for her this year, having seen how well she played last year and having seen the opportunities that she's had and how she's failed to make the most of those, and especially Roland Garros, how she failed to handle the moment and how poor she was there emotionally in that final against Coco. And then at Wimbledon too, when Amanda was playing so well in the semi-final, she wasn't able to raise the level of her game and get the job done there with Swiatek. It were waiting in the final. She would have been a big favorite in that one. So, it's been a really tough season, but sometimes, it builds character and she can come back stronger. And if she has a good New York and she gets her hands on the trophy there, then I think she's still a player to beat, no doubt.
The double-edged sword, she's so consistent, but doesn't have that major title success this year. So next match in Cincinnati is Emma Raducanu, a Wimbledon rematch. So and Emma's been playing her best tennis, I think, clearly since she made that U.S. Open run. So it's good to see Emma, Jason. I know locally in the UK they love it, but it's great to see Emma back playing at her best level.
It is, and I was talking to Mark Petchey, who's been helping her out sort of the last 6 months or so, really. And since Mark's started in that role as one of her coaches, she's had a big turnaround this season. And he was saying, one of the big things this year for Emma is the fact that she now feels like she belongs on the tour because she's been able to play week in, week out. We know, dating back to 2021 when she won the US Open, we just didn't see her. She can't play tournament, lose first round, get injured, go back, surgery, come back, play, not play particularly well, sidelined again, come back. So difficult. When you don't have the belief that your body and your mind can go at this level week in, week out. But we have seen that for the first time in a number of years this season, as far as Emma's concerned. She's got some really nice rhythm on her serve. And Mark was saying that, perhaps she wants to get even fitter. Maybe that's something she'll work on tail end of this season going into next year. But, against most players now, she's ranked just outside the world's top 32. So she can get inside 32, get seeded at the majors, get that additional protection. I think that's the level of tennis she's playing at the moment. And you put her against anybody ranked 40 to 20, she plays well, in with a good shout, no doubt. The top 4 or 5 players in the world, those that hit the ball big, like Sabalenka, like Anisimova, you still think they have too much weight of shot if they're playing well for Emma to do anything about it, because she's not really in control of many of those matches. So looking ahead, if there's anything that she wants to try and improve, is the ability to get on the front foot. It's the ability to dictate against the best players in the world. When she's fit, healthy, enjoying her tennis, which seemingly she is this year, which is great to see, then she's as good, if not better, against many, many players ranked around her ranking and a little higher. because she has that consistency, good competitor, loves her tennis. But I think the main takeaway for her this year is that she has been able to play week in, week out. Yeah. And when she's been able to do that, she's enjoyed the process of competing with the best players in the world. And the ranking's going in the right direction. Her match against Sabalenka at Wimbledon, one of the best of the championships, right? I mean, everybody loved that. Had some chances. That'll give her a lot of confidence. Very different scenario playing under the roof on center court at Wimbledon compared to playing in the heat and humidity of Cincinnati against Sabalenka. But still, she should take great heart from that performance. It was a good one.
She was right there. If she can notch a win against Sabalenka here, we'll see. But yeah, it's like you said, get to that 32, get to that seeded place and have some opportunities there. I think the women's game is in a nice place in terms of what the storylines are going in. I mentioned Coco Gauff. If she can find her serve and really get back on track there. Iga's still on cloud nine, we know, from Wimbledon. And I agreed with you earlier. Rybakina is doing some things. She's had a couple of tough losses, but she's starting to trend upward too. So we'll see. We'll see if Jessie Pegula can bounce back, last year's US Open finalist too. So I think there's a lot of top storylines with the players and seeing who can emerge. It starts here with Cincinnati.
It does. And I think, to your point, a couple of really interesting question marks there for Rybakina. We've just seen her ex-coach serve his ban back this week in Cincinnati, courtside with Davide Sanguinetti, who, of course, has done a remarkably good job to kind of steady the ship this season off the back of her coach being banned. How will that change the dynamic? She seemed to me, just as an outsider, to be enjoying her tennis this season, to be having more fun on the court. We know sometimes there's that really dark cloud over her head, and that's when she doesn't play her best tennis. So she's another one like Emma, who's been fit and healthy, played so much more tennis this season than she did last year, had to withdraw with injury and illness so often in 2024. That hasn't been the case this year, so that's great. So let's just hope that that positive trend continues for Rybakina, because again, it's great to have her at the top of the game. She's lost a couple of really tight sort of 3-set matches, 7-6 in the third in the last few months. That one against Sabalenka, I think was that in Berlin? Absolutely incredible. I think she was 6-2 up in that third set tiebreak there, 6-2 or 6-3, and then ended up losing it. So she's playing really, really well, knocking on the door. And then with Coco, watched her match yesterday in Cincy, slinging a racket across the court. She was serving so poorly again. It's remarkable.
23 double faults in a match and she wins it. That's insane.
It's just incredible how well she competes and how she's able to put that to one side, how she disengages her ego. It's not about proving to people how well she can play, proving to people that she's a two-time major champion, proving to people that she is one of the best athletes and players in the world. She just does whatever it takes on any given day to win. It can be 20 doubles, 30 doubles, forehand going to the bottom of the net. And it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do whatever it takes today to win. I'll get back on the practice court. I'll come back out in the match court in the next round. And so many players on the men's and the women's tour would not be able to do that. So many athletes in any sport would get so down, not being able to perform to a certain level, and each and every day going out into the match court and wondering, where's my game going to be? Am I going to be able to serve well today? What's going to happen? We talk about Sinner and how high his base level is, and that's where you get all your confidence from as an athlete, knowing how well you're going to be able to perform. Worst case scenario. And with Coco, she just doesn't know that. So it's incredible what she's able to achieve. But it must be hard. It must be frustrating. It must be so difficult for her to get any real enjoyment out of the process. So that's the only thing that worries me. You don't want her to get so frustrated with everything. She falls out of love with the game because, obviously she loves the game and she's having success despite all of these holes in her game. But I just want to, and I just hope that she doesn't fall out of love with the process and get sick of it all and, has to step away from the game like Anisimova did a couple of years ago. And of course, she's bounced back so strongly. So that would be my only worry. But great that she's still able to win matches. And of course, we want Coco at the top of the game. She's one of these few players that transcends the sport and is so globally famous that every time she steps on the match court, it's a win for tennis.
When the chips are down, you want her out there competing as much as anyone. She is a gamer. But there's the human enjoyment side of it too. So we'll see. We wish Coco the best. And we always love having you on the podcast, Jason Goodall. This was such a blast. I know you made time. You're going to be calling matches on Tennis Channel, Cincinnati Open. Best of luck with that and everything. You're always welcome on this show. It's always a blast to talk tennis with you. So I really do appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much. I mean, time's flown, but I got to go do my day job now. But Keep watching tennis in Cincy. It's going to be a really, really good tournament. Remember, Monday finals, so a week today, you got both championship matches. And then, of course, we get straight into the US Open. We've got the mixed doubles on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, so that's going to be fun. So don't be a stranger. Get me back on the podcast soon, man.
Oh, you're always welcome. Jason Goodall, much appreciated for coming on the Inside In Tennis podcast. This has been a blast. A reminder, you can find this podcast on all your platforms. Just go to Apple, Spotify, and all your other apps, iHeart, Amazon. And also make sure you check out the YouTube channel at Mitch Michals for the video episode of this show as well. Give us a nice review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and check out Jason Goodall on Tennis Channel's coverage of the Cincinnati Open. For Jason Goodall, I'm Mitch Michals. This was the Inside In Tennis podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.